Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades once again. I'm Joshua Solomon and I'm here with J.P. Marzullo, the Honorable J.P. Marzullo.
The Honorable, right.
Yeah,
So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Better than last week. I was having a lot of computer issues last week.
Yeah.
And it's cooler. It's cool. All the humidity's gone today.
Yeah.
But I guess it's coming back.
I went outside this morning and I thought it was fall almost. I
Yeah.
mean, it was pretty nice.
Yeah, I was getting scared. I'm like,
Not another rainy day.
I'm not ready for the snow yet. So.
Oh, no, come on.
All right. As always, Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades is sponsored by Wilson Hill Pistol Club, wilsonhillpistolclub.org, 1732 Lakeshore Road, Manchester, New Hampshire. You can find all the information you need about the club online at the website. Open enrollment. We have a meeting every first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. And again, open enrollment, so we don't have a restricted enrollment, at least not yet, like the rest of the firearms clubs in the state. No new updates on training yet, but anyway, Wilson Hill Pistol Club. Tonight's guest, we have a very special guest, Speaker of the House, Sherm Packard. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
So, tell us, we've had a heck of a session this year, this year. There's a lot of records that have been broken this year. Tell us what's going on. It's some craziness.
Well, obviously, I think, we certainly expected to be, more in the majority than we were. But we ended up at the start of the session at 201 to 198. And that's the closest the House has been in, for what they tell us from the history, since 1871.
Lucky
When
guy,
it was-
the margin.
So, I mean, I had nobody to call and ask, how did you do it, and or anything else. And I sat down with the Democratic leader, and we both agreed that, if we're going to put a budget together, which, obviously the first year we put the budget together, that we had to work together. And on any given day, either party can be in the majority.
Yeah.
A couple of times they were in the majority. Obviously a number of times we were in the majority. And as you well know, JP, the majority rules on the House floor. So
exactly.
It's been an extremely interesting session, to say the least. But the budget was obviously the biggest thing that we had to do. And when we started working on the House budget, we had, I asked, the Democratic leader, I said, why don't we get together once or twice or 3 times a week and put a budget together that we're all going to be able to, or most of us are going to be able to support when it goes to the floor, because then we have to send it over to the Senate.
Right.
And that's what we did. They said, well, we want this, and we said we want this, and we started compromising, and we put a budget together, put it before the House, and it passed on a voice vote.
Wow.
Which shocked, I think, just about everybody in the House.
No one called for a roll call.
Nobody called for a roll call.
Huh?
Wow, really? That's amazing.
Well, I was up there, and I asked, I read the bill, I read the title, and read the, and then I ask, are you ready for the question? If nobody's asked for a division vote or a roll call, and nobody said anything.
Wow.
So a number of people came to me and said, you just stood there for about 30 seconds. I said I was in kind of shock, Nobody had asked for a roll call or a division.
Down.
So I said,
oh, wow.
I think I said, I don't remember exactly. I said, are you ready for the question again? And I said, all those in favor say aye, all those opposed nay. And I wouldn't say it was unanimous, but it was darn close to unanimous on a voice vote that we passed the budget over to the Senate. That was miracle number one.
Yeah, that was a huge win, really. That was huge.
And so then the budget went over to the Senate, and you know, they have numbers that we don't have, you know, for the revenues. And so we started doing the same thing again. I met with the Senate President, and you know, on a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. And what was a little bit different this year, usually you have three budgets in essence. You have the governor's budget, you have the House budget, and you got the Senate budget. And this time we had the House Democratic budget, the House Republican budget, the Senate budget, and the governor's budget. So we started meeting, and you know, I started meeting with the Senate, and we started meeting with the Democratic leader in the House and the Democratic leader in the Senate, and we started down and started negotiating. You know, I had some things that I drew a line in the sand and said, we need this. You know, I mean, one of the things was that we wanted to increase the phase out of the interest and dividends tax, move it up. And, you know, they didn't want to go along with that. And I said, well, that's non-negotiable, that particular one. And in the same respect, they had some things that were non-negotiable, and they, you know, and they drew their line in the sand. So after, well, the Senate had it for, what, 6-7 weeks. And the night before we were going to vote on the budget, we were still negotiating.
Oh, wow.
And finally, we came to an agreement, and I mean, the Senate had already voted on it, you know, the week before, and passed it. And the negotiations were, I mean, are we going to get support from both sides? And so I was on the phone with the Democratic leader, and we were working on it because, as you know, JP, when it comes across, we can only concur or non-concur.
Right.
You know, we couldn't change it.
Yep.
And so I think it was about 10 o'clock at night we came to an agreement. And so the next day, when the you know, when we went to vote on it, we voted to concur. And I can't remember the last time that happened, because usually, you know, you ask for a committee of conference and you go to a committee of conference.
Yep.
And I was convinced that if we did go to a committee of conference, we probably wouldn't have a budget.
Yeah.
You know, because we'd have to make changes that probably one or the other side wouldn't agree with.
So, Sherm, why don't you explain to some of the listeners what a committee of conference is, how it's important in the process?
Well, a committee of conference is when, like when the Senate sent us back the bill, if we disagreed with what they sent back to us, we could ask for a committee of conference where members of the House and the Senate sit down and try and work out the differences. And I don't think I've ever, as long as I've been there, and we were looking in history again, we don't know when or if there's ever been, well, I'm sure there has been at some point, that the House just concurred with the Senate. And so we
unusual.
We moved to accept the committee, the concurrent. We moved to concur with the Senate, and we asked. I think it was a roll call vote. I can't remember if it was a roll call or division vote, but I think it was a roll call vote, and it came out 325 to 55.
Wow.
And obviously,
That's
I mean,
huge.
that's you know, again, another, we call it the miracle budget because it really was a miracle budget, and we got it passed. And it did a lot of good things, you know, for the citizens. We know that one of the things was we increased the amount of payment on Medicaid. A lot of the doctors that we talked to said that at the current level, they were literally losing money, you know, on the Medicaid payments. Mm-hmm. We sent a whole lot of money back to the cities and towns.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stuff in there that was good, and some stuff I disagreed with, some stuff, you know, the Democrats disagreed with, but overall, I think we passed a pretty darn good budget for the citizens of the state of New Hampshire.
So, do you have feel for why this happened with the budget? I mean, because we're in a situation where we have almost 50-50 split in the House. And the budget is usually the big one that everybody argues over, and it gets stalled. Why? How did that pass so easily? Is it because you preempted it with all these negotiations 2-3 times a week with the Dem leader, or like, is it because the negotiations were done ahead of time, or like, it feels like you said, a miracle. Why would such a hardly split House vote that much in favor of a budget put forth by the Republicans?
Good question.
The bottom line is yeah, it was all the negotiations that we entered into during the period that we were working on the budget. If we hadn't entered into negotiations and we hadn't agreed that there's going to have to be compromise on both sides, and I mean, we agreed with that right up front, that the only way a budget was going to pass is with both parties' votes. I mean, if one party said no to the budget, it wasn't going to pass.
So do you think if it was the methodology, the negotiation methodology that you entered into immediately as soon as the session started, do you think that's something that can become the norm for the next budget and the one after that, or does it really depend on the mindset of whoever's in charge?
Both.
No, I'm just
answer is
thinking,
yes.
you know,
Yeah,
if we want budgets to go that easy, then we can get to fighting over these other things that you know, some went well, some didn't go this session, right? You know?
It was. There's no question that if we hadn't have done the negotiations through the process, that a budget probably never would have passed. And I'm convinced that we wouldn't have a budget today.
I'm just saying, you know, maybe that's a learning thing. Maybe that's what we do next time around.
best
But
practices,
it really depends on who's in charge and whether or not they're going to take that as into consideration.
Well, I would hope going forward that we can get back. I mean, I've been in the House a number of years, and when I first came into the House, we didn't have two things that I think are causing humongous problems, and that's Facebook and Twitter. It didn't exist back then. People don't have a tendency to say things in person that they say on Facebook and Twitter.
Exactly. I agree.
And some of the stuff that we've had to deal with, what some members have put on, you know, either one of those things, it's been horrible.
Yeah.
The past speaker, Democratic
The
speaker,
tone has definitely changed over the last
it's definitely
10 years.
changed.
Yeah.
He set up a speakers advisory committee, and there was 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. And when I took over, I did the same thing. It was 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And when we get a complaint from the citizenry about a representative saying something they should have said, shouldn't have said, and you know, maybe getting way off color or something like this, we ask them to come before the Speaker's Advisory Committee so that we can try and you know, adjudicate it. And so far we've had 5 or 6 already this year.
Wow.
And it's all because of Facebook and Twitter. People say things on that they shouldn't say. It gets you know, another group mad, or somebody else mad, and it's just, well, I'm not on either one of them, and sometimes I wish they didn't exist. But the fact is, they do exist, and we have to live with what we've got. But I've noticed that the civility has gone down drastically because of things like that are said on those things where we didn't have it in the past. In the past, if you wanted to say something, you said it in person to the person.
Right.
And that we had 100% more civility when I first entered the House than we do right now. It's
Yeah, even when I was in, it wasn't that bad. That hasn't been that long ago, but we could still have, lunch or something with one of the people on the other side, and we could laugh and joke about something that came up. We didn't always agree with things, but we respected each other. And I found when I was sworn in, it's so humbling to be in that room, into the reps hall, and everybody kind of felt that way. Where I don't see that happening now.
It's each session it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
And I think that we've actually, I think this year, reversed some of that.
Good.
Because we know that the only way we're going to get anything done is we can disagree philosophically with somebody, but for God's sakes, let's stop, thinking that the person is the enemy and everything like that. We just disagree philosophically, and let's, as you said, go to lunch or go out, whatever it may be.
It used to be that way. It used to be that way even in Washington, that you could do that. But there's downsides. I mean, you get too far in bed with the other side, but I don't think that's the case here in New Hampshire. We're not that. We don't. That's not going to happen. It's the civility needs to change. So along with that, other offices or other jobs. I mean, when I take a job, I sign contracts, right? Or when a major league ball player signs a contract, there's things in the contract about conduct and public image, right? You can be a private citizen and you can have First Amendment rights, but when it comes to your public image and how it relates to the job that you're doing, there are certain things that you can and can't do and can and can't say out loud. Is there a code of conduct that exists in the House? Is that something that can be enforced and say, hey, here's your social media code of conduct, if you're deemed to do something that's damaging to this body on social media, then we're going to make you answer for it. Is that something that?
Well, yes and no. We don't have technically a code of conduct. And the majority of the time, it is a matter of free speech. And unfortunately, some of the free speech is probably shouldn't have been said, but it's still a matter of free speech as long as you're not threatening somebody or something of that nature. But if you're just talking and unfortunately calling somebody a name or something like this or making a false accusation, but they're not threatening the person, and that's where there's a real fine line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've had, and I won't get into names or anything else, but we've had some instances where some people have made comments that are repulsive to almost everybody, but they didn't quite cross the line and threaten anybody or threaten to do harm to anybody. So that does fall under this free speech. I mean, we do have an ethics committee, but they have a limit as to what they take. I mean, it's again a matter of free speech. If it's just a matter of free speech, it usually doesn't. It wouldn't go to the ethics committee.
Right.
They do something that if you misuse campaign funds or something like that,
or you accept free plane tickets for.
Well, can't get into any specifics, but there is it's pretty clearly written out in the law, on the ethics committee as to what their duties are and what they can do. So we do have, like I said, I do have the.
So there is an ethics committee. It's not like a formal code of conduct, but there are rules that have to be followed.
That have to be followed.
And but if you say some off-color things on social media,
that's
at the very least we're going to have a talk.
We can have a talk, but it's still considered free speech.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
You may disagree with that speech, and many times we do disagree from both sides with that speech, but that's unfortunately the way it is with Facebook and Twitter, and that's where probably almost all of it comes from.
Yeah, I find that that tone has seeped into people, like you said. You'd say things online that you wouldn't necessarily say in person. Uh, but in addition to that, once you've said those things online, or once somebody has said those things to you online, the two of you don't really feel like being in the same room together ever again, right? And if you are, it is a hostile situation.
Yeah.
Because, I really don't want to answer to so-and-so about what I said about him online, so I don't want to be in the same room with him, right? And, and that person may not want to confront you, right? And if they do confront you, I mean, it just goes downhill from there when you don't think about what you're saying before you say it.
Well, that's the biggest problem, I think. I mean, when we've asked these people to come before the Speakers Advisory Committee, and well, what possessed you to say what you did,
Exactly.
And sometimes it's aimed at specific persons, and sometimes it isn't, but it's usually aimed at a constituent, or a citizen of the state, and that's when we bring them in on the advisory committee. And we just had one today. I can't get into it, but why did you say that? And she said, well, they were saying bad things back to me. I said, well, I didn't say it. I leave that up. I stay away from it and let the representatives do it. But once you open the door and you say something, why wouldn't you expect that they're going to return and say stuff again, about you?
Right.
And I guess she was getting some horrific, nasty phone calls, and if you hadn't opened the door in the beginning,
Right.
you never would be getting these phone calls. So, I mean, we've tried to instill into the representatives that if you're an elected official now,
Right.
don't say those kind of things on Twitter or Facebook, or TikTok or whatever else. Don't say those things. You don't say those things, people aren't going to respond and say nasty things to you.
Yeah, and it's there forever. I mean, once you say
It's there forever. Even once it's out there, oh, well, I took it down. Well, it's too late. There's 100 copies sitting on the wall over there,
exactly.
So, once you say it and somebody sees it, it's all over.
Yeah.
All right, so other things. So we got a good budget. We got the miracle budget passed. What other good and bad things have come through?
Well, I think
What you're the Speaker of the House, so you're the referee most of the time, and you mentioned earlier that you've got this new record that belongs to you and you alone of the number of ties you've had to break all season. But typically you don't vote. But what issues are you passionate about that you're very adamant that you needed to pass or whatever? What excites you?
Well, one of the biggest issues that I think I'm disappointed on this year is that we weren't able to pass a parental bill of rights.
Yeah.
I think it's a big one for all conservatives.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it was, we really felt that the parents, and this is where the push came for us to do something, is from the parents. We had tremendous push in my hometown of Londonderry to pass this. So I sponsored the House bill, and Senator Carson sponsored the Senate bill. And unfortunately, both of them failed by just a few votes. That, I think, is one of my biggest disappointments for this year. But there was a lot of other things that we passed, and
So going back to
it was bipartisan.
Yeah.
One of the things, I think we had 675 bills this year, and the committees retained 212,
jeez.
which is again a record high number of retained bills. So that.
Wow.
And the reason most of them were retained is because the committees were split.
Yeah.
All the committees in the House are split evenly. Most of it's 10-10, some of them are 9-9, but most of them are 10-10, and it's an even split. And that created a lot of no recommendations, because if a bill came up that put in by a representative from one side or the other, and the other side didn't agree with it, it came out a 10-10 split. and we had a lot of bills going to the House floor, probably more than at any time in history, of no recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, you were there, JP. We saw maybe one or two a year that might come out no recommendation.
exactly.
I've lost track of how many we've had.
Wow.
And I would assume that a lot of the ones when we vote in January, when we go back to vote on the retained bills, a lot of those will be no recommendations.
So we lost that one because of attendance, I believe. The
Attendance,
parents, teachers.
attendance was part of it. I think we had 7 absent, and they had 3 or something like this.
So you've got to keep an eye on that when you have this close of a house. I mean, that's got to be difficult.
Attendance is absolutely critical in this session, probably more than it's ever been.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a 30 or 40, 50 vote majority and 10 people don't show up, they should, but if they don't show up, then it really doesn't change the vote on a normal occasion. But when you've got a 50-50 split, just about, attendance is absolutely key.
Yeah.
It's absolutely frustrating. I mean, as a voter, it makes me wonder about the motivations of these folks. I mean, obviously, people get ill and there's family emergencies, but for the most part, if you've run for office, you need to make that commitment to show up on session days and even committee days.
Actually, our attendance is probably the highest it's been in modern history. It's been because all the representatives know that attendance is absolutely key for whoever's going to win the day.
Yep.
And so, yeah, attendance really normally, from what it normally has been in the past, is pretty high. We're most of the time in the 90s.
Okay.
90%. So most of the representatives realize that, yeah, as you're sick, you fall down and break your leg or something like this, or
we'll come and pick you up.
You got a doctor's appointment that you've been waiting for 3 months, or something of that nature.
Well, we can't send you a plane ticket.
So, yeah, well,
I'm gonna keep bringing that up.
that was probably not the smartest thing to do, but it is what it is at certain times. But it on any given day, like I said, the Democrats had the majority. On any given day, we had the majority. Overall, like the last day of session, I think we lost one or two bills, and we won the rest of the day, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it did go back and forth. There was a couple of days where they were in the majority and they passed what they wanted to, and fortunately we had like the Senate as with the ability to as a a firewall,
Fail-safe, yeah.
Fail-safe firewall, and I'm sure next session will be the same, and but now that we got the budget out of the way, the big one next year will be the 10-year highway plan.
Oh, wow.
That they come out with every 2 years.
Yeah.
And they're already working on that. The Public Works Committee's already working on that. So that's big. Our filing period is going to be September 11th through the 15th. After that, we'll sit down and analyze what bills were filed, and then we can
sign them to committees and stuff like that.
Sign them to committees and figure out which ones we want to.
New bills are going to start coming out in a month?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, so but we've already got 200 in retained.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we have something like 1,200 the years I was there. We had an enormous amount of bills.
Yeah, there's been a couple of years that we've had well over 1,000.
Yeah.
This year here, we had, I think it was 675 House bills, and I think it was 275 Senate bills.
Yep.
So it was actually a little bit lower than normal.
Yeah.
For a first year of session.
Right.
But we have a week for filing period. I think the Senate's going to have 2 weeks, but later on in the month. So our dates aren't the same.
Yeah.
And if we have anything, we are working on a couple of major issues. There is some retirement issues that we're working on.
State retirement?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's also, I mean, one of the biggest issues right now affecting us, obviously, is the clean water issue.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars to do what needs to be done. So we're chipping away at that as best we can.
Yeah.
We did put a lot of money into that, you know, ARPA money, and we do have a terrific surplus. I think
Yeah.
our surplus is $518 million.
Yeah.
So that was, we just found that out about a week or so ago. So we're hoping that, you know, we'll be able to put some of that money to work.
Got a phone call.
Good evening. You're on Rock Paper Hand Grenades with Joshua and JP and Speaker of the House. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing pretty well. I'm watching your show, and I heard the speaker mention what you could call reform to the reform of 2011. And, you know, they were saying pension equals retention because, you know, there's a labor shortage. And all that's great, but I just kind of want to remind the speaker that in 2011, both Group 1 and Group 2 pensions were changed, okay? Or reformed, if you want to use that word. And if they're going to reform the reform of 2011, I hope that they do it for both Group 1 and Group 2. And I just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I am aware of that, and we're working on this because of what was done in 2011, and this is what we're hoping to fix. We set a special committee up, and I sit on it. The Senate President sits on it. The Democratic leader in the House and the Senate sit on it. And we realized that you know, there was like 1,800 and I think 34 people that were affected by this, and I don't have the breakdown of Group 1 and Group 2, but that is what one of the things that we have on a high priority list to try and fix.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much, and have a nice night.
Thank you.
You too.
So, tell us the difference between Group 1 and Group 2. What are these for the viewers who don't know?
Group 2 is fire, police, and security guards in the prison. Group 1 are teachers and, you know, most state employees.
Okay. And so what's the problem that's...
It was a problem that the formula was changed back in 2011, and that created some problems, and we've got all that on the table right now, you know, to try and work it out.
Okay.
So when you were not the speaker, what bills or what committees were you on? I was always curious about that.
Well, most of my time in the chamber, I was on the transportation committee. I was chairman for 12 years.
Okay.
And you know, I came from a transportation background, so. You know,
I'm not familiar with that. What's
well,
your background?
I was in the automotive upholstery business.
Oh, okay.
I did automotive interiors and convertible tops and stuff like that. That's what my business was.
Okay.
So I mean, you know, I've been around cars all my life. You know, that was my love, along with motorcycles. Yeah, along with motorcycles. So that's how I earn my living. You know, and I'm just about retired right now. Haven't got enough time. I'm at the State House usually 5 days a week.
Yeah, I figured that.
And so I
for what, 125 you get because you're the
yeah,
speaker?
I get an extra $25 a year. You know, I'm having trouble spending it. I don't know what to spend it on. But so
No, yeah, I was just curious because were there any other committees that you were part of during that time?
well, I subbed in some committees
Yeah.
here and there. I
When
mean,
they have executive votes.
I've been on legislative facilities for quite a few years.
Oh, okay, sure.
I sat on rules for a number of years. But you know, a lot of times I'd sub here and there, but
Right.
transportation was always a committee I you know, I served on.
So does the train come under transportation?
Yes, yeah, the train that has been,
That we've
was,
reviewed how many times?
well, that first committee was set up back in '07 when the Democrats took over, and they passed the bill to set up the committee to look at,
Yeah, right.
hooking the trains back up from Massachusetts to initially Nashua and then Manchester and then hopefully to go to Concord. I'm not against trains, but back then, the estimated cost
Oh, yeah.
of just the upgrades of the tracks was like $350 million.
Yeah.
And then the subsidies were going to be, at the time, we were estimating anywhere from $8 to $12 million
Yeah.
Per year?
per year
Yeah.
for subsidies to keep it running once it was up and running.
Well, the whole idea of subsidies just goes against my conservative tax cut brain, right? Because if the commercial entity can't make enough money to stay above water, then why am I paying for it? It's obviously not being put to enough good use that people want to use it. So why would we subsidize it? But anyway, that's...
Well, the fact of the matter is, I think every train system in the world, except maybe one or two here or there, is subsidized. Okay, the
Well, I
Down
know
Easter,
that Amtrak has a huge
the Down
subsidy
Easter is subsidized,
yeah.
Amtrak is subsidized, most of your commuter lines and everything else are all subsidized. And so the question came, and now the latest figures I hear, if we were to do it, the capital costs are going to be, what, $700 or $800 million,
Yeah.
up from $350 million. And I don't know. I think the subsidies would have to be increased also. So, I mean, it's the question keeps coming up, is it going to, one of the things that
Does
was
the
always
benefit
brought
outweigh
up.
the cost? Right?
Well,
and the
that's-
continued cost.
that's
if it's a
what-
one-time cost to upgrade things, I'm almost okay with that. But that continued cost, that is an ongoing tax that's coming out.
That would be ongoing.
Yeah.
The upgrade would probably, would be a one-time thing.
Yeah.
But
That's what I'm saying. Like
yeah.
that's what scares me is the ongoing.
Yeah, and
should.
we don't know. I mean, I say back in '07 when they first put this committee together and they started doing their work, it was around 8 to 12 million. And it's hard to really get a total estimate because you don't know what the ridership is going to be.
Exactly.
And one of the things was that, well, we'll take all these cars off the road. Well, the estimate of how many would be actually taken off the road was minuscule. So, it wasn't really going to affect global warming or anything else. And how many people were going to use it, nobody wanted to step up to the plate and subsidize them. That's where the problem came in, is that the cities didn't want to actually chip in some money. Everything always fell back to they wanted the state to chip in.
Sure.
They said, well, it's going to bring business along the tracks. Well, some of the businesses were talked to, well, you want to throw some money in for the subsidy? And of course they didn't either.
Right.
But I don't see that going anyplace at this particular time.
Good.
And it's not that I'm against trains. I mean, they have their place and they have their usage, but is it practical to spend that kind of money, for a train, from the MBTA, who, from what I understand, is the most poorly run system in the country.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
So, are we going to, set up with the MBTA and get the same kind of service and the everything else and all the problems they have down there?
There's only a few trains that really work, commuter trains. Like I used to commute from Connecticut into New York.
Yeah.
And then I commuted from Maryland to Philly by train. But they were always packed. Everybody was going to work, and the problem with that is if you don't go to a building for work, like you're a salesperson or something, you can't take the train. You'd have to get in, use cabs, or take a trolley or something like that. It was so foolish.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Like so, like you
I
were
didn't mean to
saying,
get off
you get
track,
a commuter
pun.
train from Connecticut into New York. Once you're in New York City, you've still got public transportation
Yeah,
get
you do.
everywhere you need to go.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
But that's really not the case here. People in Manchester and Concord who work in Massachusetts, they don't all necessarily work right downtown Boston where
Right.
they can get off the commuter train and go somewhere else. Most of them work in other areas,
Yeah.
right?
In suburbs of the
Most
city.
of the suburbs around Boston don't have, you still have to get out and get an Uber, get a taxi.
But you get it.
Who would it take off the road?
Well, the
right?
MBTA.
Never mind the rural nature of New Hampshire. Everybody
Yeah.
still has to get in their car, drive to a train station, and now we have to have more parking garages to fit
Sure.
those people, right?
Yeah.
Because they still, you're not, like you said, you're not taking anything off the road.
Plus, you have to live to their schedule. Like I was just going to say, if you work outside the city of Boston and you go in by train, you can take MBT one of the MBTA routes when they run. You have to rely on them actually running, but it doesn't work. It just
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we were looking at, initially, is that a lot of, obviously in southern New Hampshire where we're at, the Londonderry, Salem,
Yep.
that I-93 corridor, a lot of people from, the towns, Windham, commute to
Yep.
Massachusetts. But they don't all go to Boston.
That's right.
There's a lot of those huge companies, in between the Mass border and Boston, that those people go to, which wouldn't be serviced by this train.
like the high-tech ring around
Right,
the
the
city.
high-tech ring, yeah.
You can't get there. So I didn't mean to bring up the train issue, except
No,
it's
that's
always been on my mind, because every time I get into that conversation, people will say, well, we'd love to take the train in. And I said, but we live in the southern part of the state. What if you live north? Who's going to be using this train the most?
But see, that's the thing. The people who say they would love to take the train are going to be people who are doing it on weekends,
On vacation.
doing it for recreational reasons.
Exactly.
The commuters are not going to fill that train every morning at
No,
6 a.m.
no.
Not going to happen.
Some of the routes you mentioned, I know like the route, if you fly into BWI down in Baltimore and you need to get to Washington,
Yep.
they've got that Acela train.
It's right there.
And the Maryland, what do they call it? The Maryland
Transport
system, whatever it is, constantly running. And those trains are always full. Every time I've had to fly in, those
Yeah.
trains are always full. But you got to consider, there's no place to park in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
So if you don't take a train in,
And
You're out of luck.
You're out of luck.
And the public transportation system, that network exists at your destination. It doesn't exist at the destinations for most New Hampshire folks who
No.
commute to Massachusetts.
No. And again, I don't think, unless you go to a building for your job, one place, the train doesn't help you at all. Then you have to wait on their time schedules. So if you want to get home earlier or leave late, it may not even be running. And that's a big issue. I hope we never, ever get that. It may come someday, but I don't think we're ready for it now.
It may come. Everybody says, "Oh, you're against trains." I'm not against trains.
No. No.
But I'm for reality.
Thank God.
A couple of years ago, I was in, I took a vacation to France, and we wanted to go out to one of the small villages so we could go to the Normandy beaches and stuff.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And they have a terrific train system.
Oh, sure.
It's new, it's
Yep.
modern, it worked great. It was like a 2-hour ride to get out to where we were going, but I think we've let our whole infrastructure completely fall apart. So if you were to go to high-speed trains in this country, you'd have to probably just about start from scratch again. Because our infrastructure is so old.
Right.
And just by all the accidents that have been happening,
Train accidents.
train
yeah.
accidents have been happening. Fortunately, I don't think any of them are commuter, but it's
they
all
haven't
been
been.
freight and everything else. But yeah, we've got an antiquated system.
Yeah, it's all it all goes back to the United States. We are a continental-sized country, and there's a lot of open space. And We are a fairly rich or country. Most families outside of cities have vehicles. Most people would rather be in their vehicles, and there's very long distances, hours-long distances at 70 miles an hour between train stations, or to get to a train station that can take you across country. We've changed our infrastructure to be trucks, the trucking industry and whatnot, and that's just not. That's the way Americans think. It's part of our freedoms, right? Is that we all have the means to do this ourselves. We don't need public transportation. Whereas you go into European countries, a lot of people don't own vehicles. A lot of people live in very urban areas where that structure is necessary, and people don't need. I mean,
but it's the same thing true in New York City and D.C.
Yeah.
People don't need vehicles in those cities, and
I know people who are grown adults who have lived, born and raised in New York City,
Don't know how
in
to drive,
Manhattan,
right?
don't have driver's licenses.
Yep.
Their parents don't have driver's licenses. It's just not something that's not necessary. But we don't have that infrastructure once you get into rural America, and that is America, right? These urban areas do not represent what most Americans are.
Yeah, public transportation in Chicago and New York City, and in Boston, I mean, any of the big cities is absolutely imperative.
Oh, yeah.
Because, if everybody that depended on public transportation had a car, they'd be stacked on top of each other.
True.
There wouldn't be any place to put them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is a necessity, and it's something that, we put a lot of money into, both state and federal put a lot of money into, well, not so much in New Hampshire because we don't have that, but, they put a lot of money into the public transportation system because it's an absolute necessity for people to get around.
Sure.
All right, so let's talk about something more fun. Let's talk about toys and motorcycles.
Okay.
I like toys. I like motorcycles.
This is a plug. I mean, I've been an avid motorcyclist since the late 60s, and for the past 40 years, the organization that I started back in '75, New Hampshire Motorcyclist Rights Organization, has put on a toy run to collect toys for the Salvation Army. And it's going to be on September 10th, and all the toys go to the Salvation Army for their Christmas toy shop. And every year, as long as it's good weather, we collect thousands of dollars worth of toys. We can have 400, 500, 600 motorcycles that'll ride. We're going to ride from the Department of Safety building in Concord to the Comcast building down on Industrial Park Drive. And I want to personally thank Comcast for letting us use the parking lot, because it's everything we do. We collect money and toys for the Salvation Army for needy kids. And I know a lot of times if you want to get tears in your eyes, go down to the toy shop, during when they have it open, to give parents, the toys, for some reason that they're out of work for whatever, sickness or anything else, and when they pick those toys up and are able to give them to the kids for Christmas, it doesn't bring tears to your eyes. Nothing will.
Yeah.
But so we've been doing this for 40 years, and this is going to be done, like I said, on September 7th. We're going to leave the Department of Safety parking lot exactly at 1 o'clock.
So it's on Hazen Drive, right?
On Hazen Drive.
Okay.
And, people start collecting start corrugating there about 11 o'clock. We have a state police escort.
Oh, nice.
And so I say everything is for the kids, and it's, a lot of times, they'll have some kids there when we come in, and we got Santa on a motorcycle. So,
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Santa in September.
Santa in September. But I say it all goes to the Salvation Army for the for their Toys for not Toys for Tot, that's the Marines.
Yeah.
But the Santa Toy Fund there.
All right. So how do I get my toys there? Do I
Everybody
I have to strap him on my bike?
Everybody straps them on their bike, and the Salvation Army picks them up. They'll have a trailer there.
At Hazen or at Comcast?
At Comcast.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have to ride with the toys.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we ride.
No, that sounds like fun. You strap.
We ride in a
Figure out
group
how
down.
to strap on one of
so-
those big power wheels on the back of my.
Well,
You can do it.
I've seen bicycles on motorcycles. I've seen some of these stuffed bears.
Yeah, I've seen large stuffed bears,
that are
yeah.
5 feet tall,
Yeah.
stuffed
Yeah.
on motorcycles. It's incredible what some of the people put on there.
Yeah.
But
Your organization does a great job, and for the citizens, I'd like to thank you because that's amazing. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but that's a big group, and you've done it
Yeah.
for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, it's
You have up and down years. I mean, 40 years is a
Well,
long time to be
it's,
doing a toy run.
it's if we have good weather, we have good turnout.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's a rainy day, it diminishes the turnout, and that just diminishes the toys that the Salvation Army gets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we always hope and pray for good weather. As long as it isn't raining, sunnier is better. But as long as it isn't raining, we always get a real large group of people showing up.
Yeah, that's
great.
We've been doing it for so long, and we've been doing it. It's the weekend after Labor Day weekend, and it's this year it's the 10th. So anybody that wants to, even if you don't ride a motorcycle, you want to bring some toys to the Comcast parking lot on Sunday, the 10th, about after 1 o'clock. You can bring the toys and just drop them off.
That's good.
So
to
you
know.
don't have to ride on a motorcycle. We encourage anybody that wants to bring some toys for the Salvation Army, just bring them, and like I said, it's for the needy kids in the state of New Hampshire.
I assume new toys in packages.
New toys and packages. Yeah, we try and encourage that. You bring both a male and female toy.
Okay.
Like I said, I've seen bicycles strapped onto motorcycles, and
That's something Gary would have done.
Yeah. Gary would have tried to put the biggest thing he could on
On
the
his back,
of the bike.
absolutely.
He would have.
Absolutely.
So I say to everybody, come on out. The Salvation Army will be there collecting all the toys, and it's just it's a wonderful thing to do for the citizens.
Is
for
there
the needy
anything else
kids.
going on at the end of the ride, like lunch or food trucks, or is it?
Well, the Salvation Army usually has hot dogs and hamburgers there.
Okay, so-
And it's they ask for a contribution. They don't charge you. They ask for a contribution. So it's not a party or anything else. It's just having the run and then collecting the toys for the kids.
Good. All right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I see you got papers. No pressure.
Well, no, that was just stuff that was in the budget this year. If we had gotten into it, but some of the things that we did. But like I said, we've already talked about some of the stuff that we sent back to the cities and towns. So it's.
All right. Well, I mean, we're just about to the end, so maybe you can let our viewers know how they can get in touch with you if they need anything, they want to talk to you, they want to complain to you, they want to yell at you. Right? So, well, you give them two different numbers, right? So here's the email address if you want to talk to me. Here's the email address if you want to complain about something.
Well, if somebody wants to email me, it's sherm_packard@juno.com. If they want to call the State House and ask for the Speaker's office, they can do that and leave a message.
Okay.
As long as you're from the state of New Hampshire, don't call me from Colorado or Montana or something, because I'm probably not going to call you back. But if you're from the state of New Hampshire and you call me with a question or something, I'll have somebody make sure they get back to you. Maybe if it's a subject I'm not totally familiar with, the committee chairman or something like this, we always do our absolute best to get back to the citizens when they call in with either a problem or a complaint or whatever.
All right. And you're looking to have a good next term, right? We're hopefully to have a bit more of a majority after these special elections.
We're hoping.
All right, we'll have you back at the end of next term and tell us how this goes. All right?
That's fine. We hope to end this year. We ended on June 29th. I'm hoping to end at the end of May this year,
Nice.
this coming session,
Nice.
because we don't have the budget and that stuff to deal with. So we should be able to.
Well,
end a little
thanks for
bit
being
earlier.
on with us. I appreciate it. And,
Went pretty quickly, actually.
yeah, it always
goes
does.
quick.
Yeah.
Thanks for. Do we know who the guest is next week? Or no.
No.
Okay, we don't know yet, but it'll be
It'll
on
be somebody-
Facebook. We'll
yeah.
let you know, and we'll see you next week.